Welcome back, everybody. Everybody else will be back in about 10 seconds. Margaret, you ready to go with your speech? Y'all will be next. So, hey everybody, welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that warm up. We're almost all back. Sweet. Yeah, so more impromptu speeches. It's a good thing to be practicing. We'll be doing more on Thursday. Very similar kind of opening kind of thing. But before we get into your next speech, we do have at least one makeup speech. I want to ask, is anybody else here besides Margaret wanting to give a makeup speech of any kind today? Sunny. Awesome. Anybody else? And Molly. Perfect. All right. So we'll go Margaret, Sunny, Molly. Anybody else? I'll ask one more time. But so good. Awesome, everybody. Well, let's get right into it. So Margaret, you feeling ready to go? You're muted still.
All
Perfect.
right.
Oh, don't start yet. Don't start. Don't start.
I
I got
won't.
have my stuff ready. Okay. Now you're good. I'm gonna mute myself. The floor is yours.
Sweet. Thank you. I have some music while I figure out screen sharing. Share. Okay, can you guys see that okay? Okay, sweet. Thank you guys. Also, I just want to preface with my cats being kind of fussy, so if you hear meowing and everything, that's just her. But horror. Some of us love it, some of us hate it, some of us try to hide from it, but it lurks in the darkness either way. Um, the co-culture I'll be highlighting today is that of like the horror community, specifically film, so cinematic horror. Um, Also, just like a warning, I know a lot of people I know don't like horror. I'm not going to be showing like anything like gory, no like icky images. I'm not going to be going into details of like really scary horror movies. This is definitely more on the community. I will be like briefly mentioning, disturbing topics and stuff just as it relates to horror, but I don't want anyone to be nervous about that. Um, so horror cinema has been around as early as the 1890s. With the first big horror movie, actually classified as horror as Dracula. It was Dracula in 1931, which we can see here with Bela Lugosi. Horror has not always been the most popular genre. It really started gaining speed in the 1950s and kind of going up from there with like ebbs and flows throughout the decades. But I am not here to talk about horror history. I could talk about that for literally hours, and I do not have hours. But I mostly wanted to touch on the community, so including the writers, the filmmakers, and of course the fans of horror like myself. One of my favorite things about the horror community is diversity. So, to be very clear, horror is not the pinnacle of diversity heaven. It's had historically like a lot of issues with representation. So, most notably, like people of color and indigenous people have been depicted with racial stereotypes throughout the history of horror film. Women have been sexualized or, you know, um, have had like violence brought against them. LGBTQ plus communities or queer communities and communities of people with disabilities are either like the butt of the joke in a lot of older historical horror movies or more recent horror movies, unfortunately, or they're just not represented at all. So I wanted to have that preface before moving into how much I love the diversity of horror movies today. Um, it's something that, it has to start with the community in order to like uplift these voices. And that's something I've seen more and more is, especially like Black creators, most notably Jordan Peele. You can see Get Out up there, kind of carving spaces for minority voices to uplift Black experiences, minority experiences. And I think, it's not just these creators who can create things just pumping stuff out. and it's not received anywhere. I've been seeing a lot of people in the horror community really embracing it, loving these new perspectives, fostering this. I also, whenever I sit in like a modern horror movie today, like I expect to see good representation. I expect to see complex representation of minorities. I also showed like, Der Samurai and I Saw the TV Glow. Those are both queer horror movies. Scary Crit is a podcast with like Black creators and things like that. So again, I don't want to brush over how complex the horror journey has been for minorities, especially people of color and indigenous people, but I think it really is beautiful watching the community grow in diversity. And just because that's such a complex issue, I have two, like a podcast and then this by Jesse Simpson, a really, really good article or essay they wrote. The Only Good Indian is a horror book, but they still touch on a lot of like Black horror and how it's perceived in like film and media. So I would recommend checking those out. I think maybe the biggest like question about being a horror fan is like, why the hell would you watch horror? If it's scary. I personally like am a very anxious person. And so I think it sounds really silly for me to continue watching things that like make me hide underneath a pillow or make me have to sleep with the light on like once or twice, even though I'm 28, it's fine. But it actually like relieves anxiety. So this is something I've heard like really echoed in the horror community. And it's that, even though your blood pressure is rising, even though you might get a nightmare, like while you're watching the horror movie, it kind of allows you to dive into like darker topics and topics that scare you, situations that scare you in a much more controlled environment. Usually doing it with people around you. So it's kind of like a shared trauma bonding. Um, yeah, so it's something that's echoed a lot that I really like to hear. And it just allows me a more feeling of control with things that cause me anxiety rather than, throughout my daily life, I feel like I can't control my anxiety. It's everywhere, it's unpredictable. But like when I sit down for a horror movie, I can kind of, it's like exposure therapy almost. I can kind of like microdose anxiety in a way that makes me comfortable. And a lot of people echo that as well. Um, there was also this article that I thought was really cool that I found in my travels and research about horror fans and how they approached and dealt with the COVID pandemic. So there's like evidence that like people who watch horror movies and who take them in and like people in the horror community are really good at like kind of coping with anxiety and coping with really vast, grand, like terrifying things. Not always, but it's a really cool article. So I would recommend looking at it. With this, I interviewed my coworker Naomi. Neither of these are Naomi. But I asked her, why she loved horror. And so for her, she said, to paraphrase her answer, she found it very liberating. She said it keeps her open-minded and less susceptible to scary things, or to things she finds terrifying, kind of like that reminded me of the COVID pandemic. And I thought that was cool that she separately said that without knowing about this. Naomi also works in the funeral service industry. So she said watching horror is kind of like a relief and kind of provides, an outlet for anxiety in a controlled environment. And this is, again, something that I hear echoed a lot and kind of like a lot of horror fans bond over that, which I think is super cool. And then I also, the first time I saw Naomi, it's going to like bring into the next point, but the first time I saw Naomi, she works at my funeral home. She's super cool looking. She's super badass. She has all these tattoos and piercings, kind of like a mean mug. And I saw her and I was like, oh my God, this is my coworker. I'm so uncool. I have no idea what I'm going to do. Like, how am I going to relate to this person I see every single day? But I saw on her keychain, she had like a little horror, like little pyramid head from Silent Hill. And immediately I felt like, oh my God, this is going to be easy because I know how like welcoming and how community forward the horror community is. Which brings kind of the next point forward is that welcoming essence of the horror community that I kind of wish a lot more people understood. Also, that little guy, I don't know if you can see him, but that's Pyramid Head. That's the one that Naomi had on her keychain that I was like, oh, a friend. But just because horror fans like things that are scary, disturbing, taboo, unsettling, it doesn't mean that we are. Again, I can understand not liking horror, but I've only ever found it to be incredibly welcoming. And again, there's a lot of bonding. A lot of people in horror communities and horror film communities feel like they never were really understood, and horror kind of like encapsulates that. And I think it's also, really sweet that like usually when I'm speaking to someone who doesn't like horror or is kind of like intimidated by it, usually they're received with not like, oh, you're lame, you're silly, you're a baby. It's usually like, if you want, I can show you some beginner movies. Like, I would love to watch more horror with you. It's very much like kind of almost kind of cultish. It's like, come join us. And I think it's really sweet and welcoming. Let me see. And so lastly, I just wanted to finish off by saying it is like a community of like curiosity and empathy. I know not everyone's into it, and obviously there's a lot of dark themes in there, but I think you really can kind of find your niche, and I'd always encourage people to, try to find something. So I posted all my, well, not all of them, but a lot of my favorite horror movies. I highlighted the ones that I thought would be okay for beginners. Um, but also I think my level is kind of high. So I of course put the note, I always recommend checking for horror movies. There's that silly website, Does the Dog Die? It was originally created to see if a dog will die in a movie because no one wants to watch a dog die in a movie, even if it's fictional. But now people will use it to vet like triggers and everything in content. So I would recommend doing that if you're nervous. If you're ever curious about horror movies, yeah, I put the green ones, and the ones with skulls would be only if you really, it's kind of intense stuff. So maybe don't look it up if you're into beginning horror movie stuff. But yeah, thank you for listening. Hmm.
Excellent work. That was really, really good. Yeah, and a lot of fun. I like looking at your list here. You know what's funny is you had that was excellent research, by the way. Wasn't that wild, everybody? Like,
I
nobody
had
else.
so much fun. I
Like,
feel like
here's
I
my
got almost carried away. I
yeah.
had so much fun looking at
That's
it.
great. That's great. That was really cool. The point that was in one you showed at the end there, where it was like the horror movie watchers watch them as like a simulation. I think that makes tons of sense to me. Like,
Yeah.
and I think it also makes a weird amount of sense because, like, I don't need to know how to survive a zombie apocalypse, not really, but I have a lot of ideas for how to do it. And I feel like when you watch a horror movie, you stop thinking about your actual real problems, but you get to use those skills because we're humans, we need to problem solve. You get to use those to apply to something you can solve, like, oh, zombies. I can figure out ways to solve that problem. I can't figure out
Yeah,
how to, get rid of our president, but I can figure out how to survive a zombie apocalypse. So,
exactly. Like it
yeah.
practices anxiety coping. So
Yeah, so
that's cool.
wild. Anyway, excellent work. All right, who's next? I know I said, but I already forgot. I think it was Sunny. Are you next? Or no?
I can be next. Yeah.
Was it you? Okay, okay. Awesome. Let me get my stuff ready. Hold on.
Okay. I'm gonna make sure I have like my pictures.
Oh yeah, yeah. Feel free to practice screen sharing if you want to.
Sorry, I'm having a technical difficulty.
It's okay. Do you want me to move on? There was somebody else who wanted to go tonight too, but who was that?
I was next. I can go.
You were next. Okay, well, let's have you go
Yeah.
next then. Yeah. And Sunny, you figure your stuff out while Molly goes. Let me get all this ready. All right. All right, my ducks are in a row. You feeling good?
Yeah, I'm ready.
All right, I'm muting myself. It's all you.
Okay, give me just a second here. I wasn't ready. I gotta set my timer. Adjust my stopwatch to make sure I
Yeah, good idea. No problem.
if you see my cat in the background, I'm sorry.
It's no problem. I'll just assume that's part of it.
I love us. Okay. Um, I don't know about you guys, but have you ever seen a story and been like so deeply inspired by it? Like you're enamored, it changes your perspective of like good and evil and like belonging and purpose. I don't know about you guys, but for me and a lot of other people, that movie was Star Wars. I am a super mega big Star Wars fan, so I wanted to share a little bit of that as like a quote from a cult culture perspective. Um, I'm just gonna kind of dot around the topics here. First, I wanted to address activities and ceremonies. I thought this was like a really cool thing to look into because it's like you don't exactly see like a movie or like a fandom like that celebrating like a holiday. But for Star Wars, we've got Star Wars Day, which is May 4th, celebrated globally. It's a pun turned into a holiday. But now like Lucasfilms, Disney, um, all kinds of groups host things. I know I personally, me and my partner, who is also obviously a very big Star Wars fan, we will get together and have a dinner, a May the 4th dinner. We cook everything out of the Star Wars cookbook, and then we watch all of the movies in order with each other. So I saw Steve's face. Yeah, yeah, we'll be up for a while, but it's so special to me, and I really love it. We also have Star Wars Celebration, which is like a flagship convention. It started in 1999, but it's tens of thousands of people come. There's panels, like premieres for new stuff coming out, fan art, cosplay, all of it is super cool. One of the things I wanted to show off, I personally got at a Star Wars celebration. It is my Darth Maul lightsaber. Um, I actually have a blade here to show you guys. Uh, it's pretty cool if you ask me. I don't know about you. It reacts to sound, light, all that kind of stuff. This is unfortunately only one half of his lightsaber. For those of you who know Star Wars, you saw in the Phantom Menace, right, when Darth Maul fights Obi-Wan. He's got a dual-ended lightsaber, so the second half connects to the base of this. I do not have it yet, but it is in my cart, and I am one of these days, right? I'll own it. Um, but that's kind of it for the holidays. One of my favorite things about Star Wars is that it's so widespread. Star Wars, it's like a generational fandom almost, which is pretty cool. You know, fans of the series often identify with whichever set of movies they were introduced to first. So a lot of the, as we call them, the original Star Wars fans, you know, we're super fans of the original trilogy, 1977 and 1983. I myself would consider myself definitely a very big prequel trilogy fan. I love Anakin Skywalker's downfall. Super big fan of it all. And so those movies ran from 1999 to 2005. And then nowadays we even have the youngest Star Wars fan generation, right? With the sequels that came out under Disney. So that's something that I think you don't see very often that I think is really cool. Um, an interesting feature of my cult culture I would like to share would be, not a lot of people know this, but Star Wars was so cool when it came out for the 1976 movie, they had such advanced goals with special effects that they had to invent a completely new digital motion control photography camera system, an entirely new one. They called the Distraflex, and it was named after their developer, John Dykstra. It was developed by ILM, which they came out and even explained how it works. So according to ILM, each spaceship was filmed individually before combining all of those shots into a single battle or chase scene. And although, it's improved since it came out in 1977, it was pretty legendary at the time, and I think that's just so cool that Star Wars has been able to have such an insane effect on even movies to this day, right? It was really the first of its time. As for a story of my life involving the code culture, I have a lot of them. I One thing that I think is super cool is how much new content we have in Star Wars, right? Like even now we're still getting shows, movies, games. It's really cool. And I actually found a survey done by a quantitative social scientist. His name is Mark White. He's also a super big Star Wars fan, as I'm sure you can imagine if he's doing a quantitative study on this. But he surveyed over 5,000 fans, and found that most like Star Wars devotees, as he called them in the study, actually like regularly consume news on the franchise's development. So they own collectible, watch cartoon adaptations, read the novels that fleshes out the story a little bit more, and they play the video games. I know I personally can attest to this. I am a super big fan of the expanded universe novels. We call them legends. Recently made non-canon by Disney, and I have my own beef to pick with that, but that's unrelated. I love them. I think they're super cool. I personally really like the Thrawn trilogy, Heir to the Empire, Dark Force Rising, and The Last Command. If you're gonna get into one, I recommend the Thrawn trilogy. It's super cool. Um, I also collect a lot of the Legos, and I have one here to show you guys. Her. She is my beloved. She opens, and she also hangs. She hangs from the ceiling. So I brought her down before today to show you guys. Sorry, I'm going over my timer here, but I'm excited. It opens so you can see the bridge and then all the minifigs. It's super cool, but I think that's something honestly you find kind of across the board in Star Wars fandom. It's just so it transcends time, right? It's just so cool. That's kind of all I have for you guys, but I just wanted to share a little bit more about that. I hope you got a kick out of it. Watch Star Wars. Watch Star Wars. Bye.
That was really, really good, Molly. That was excellent. Thank you for sharing your clear, absolute love for Star Wars with us. That was infectious and beautiful. Thank you. Yeah.
Thank you for letting me nerd out.
Oh, this is the perfect opportunity for it. Yeah, that's really good. I love your May the 4th idea, like what you guys do. I want to steal that. My family watches Star Wars on Christmas Day for some reason. Like we'll watch one of them. It's my brother. He makes us all do it.
Yeah, no, it's an all day affair. Me
That's
and my
awesome.
partner and all of our friends, like it's like 5, 7 people. We all get together like bright and early in the morning, and we start on the first movie, and then we basically watch every single one until we're done. But throughout that, we cook from the cookbook. Yeah, we have a whole bunch of stuff. Revenge of the Fifth. Okay, that's
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. I was born in 74. I
yeah.
I have a memory of going to see the original Star Wars in a theater, but I was too young. My memories are I have two memories. We're standing in line outside the theater and I'm kicking the wall and my parents yell at me. And then the second memory is we finally get inside the theater, like we get inside the theater and I just took off running up some stairs and my parents yell at me. And that's it. I have no memory of the actual movie, but I remember going to it, and that's it. And I'm like,
You must have, were you pretty young?
I was 3. So
Oh yeah, I
I picked
wouldn't
the
remember
exact
much either
right,
then.
right? The movie itself, but I have like really clear memories of my family being all excited, and this was a big
Yeah,
deal.
it
And I got
was
all excited and got in trouble. That's it.
I'd do anything to see it, to rewatch the movies again like I'd never seen them before.
Mm.
Especially the prequels. They're just so special to me, but yeah,
Hopefully
for
now
sure.
that Disney's made their final 3, I don't know. Hopefully there'll be better stuff. Hopefully there'll be new
Yeah,
things.
yeah, there definitely is if you like play the games. If you want more content, I'd recommend play the Knights of the Old Republic games. Those are really
My
cool.
brother liked those too. Who did my brother get along? That's awesome.
Yeah.
All right, Sonny, how you feeling? You feeling good to go?
I think so.
You think so?
I
Okay.
I think I figured it out. Yeah. Okay.
Do you need some more time to try out anything, or are you good?
Um, I think I should be good.
All right.
Oh,
Well, then I'm gonna mute myself, and it's all yours.
I'm gonna start my stopwatch so I don't talk too much.
No
I might get
worries.
excited. Okay, I might like stutter a bit because that like happens when I'm talking too much about something that I'm excited about. So we'll have to deal with it. Don't judge me. I don't think any of you will or like will care at all. But um my throat is really dry, sorry. All right, so we already know that me, that Sunny is autistic. And you know what they say about autistic people is that they really like dinosaurs. So that's what I'm talking to you about today. Let me see if I can find my photo. I just wanted to share this like silly image. This is me every night. This is what I think about before I go to bed. So yeah, I really like dinosaurs very much. I've always enjoyed them. I've always found them very great and awesome since I was little. I really liked like the Land Before Time, I think it's called. Um, and I think the other one was like Dragon Scales or something, if anybody knows what I'm talking about. Yeah, Margaret gets it. I loved that one too. So I like to interact with like social spaces on social media online uh, with other people who really like dinosaurs, like more than a normal amount. Um, and with that, there's like a lot of beef going on in the dinosaur community. Um, People like to argue over which dinosaur is better and which could like beat the other one in a fight. So I also have an image to share with you for that. This is really long, but let me see if I can zoom in. This is a common thread under like I don't remember what the TikTok was, but you can see they're like beefing, like Triceratops is better, could beat Ankylosaurus in a fight easy, but they get really into it, like it's serious. Personally, I think that Triceratops is like that bitch. So I think the Triceratops would win. Um, I also have another image. I have nothing like to say about this. I just wanted you guys to see it. So here's this also. Okay, let me find my other photos. All right. Oh, where did my Zoom go? Okay. I don't think on the recording you can like see other people, but I can see you guys. So if anybody, um, your like favorite dinosaur is a pterodactyl, raise your hand. I'll have to like scroll, so I don't know if anybody's actually doing it. But pterodactyls aren't actually dinosaurs. They were pterosaurs, which were more of like an extinct type of like reptile. Um, they have like different physical characteristics that set them apart from dinosaurs because their like limbs go out from like the side of their body, kind of like a lizard. So yeah, if you look up a picture of one, they do just look like really weird lizards. Um, Pterosaurs were also like the first vertebrates to evolve flight capabilities. Um, and if you didn't know, vertebrates are just like a group of animals that have a backbone. So like birds and mammals. I'm out of breath from talking too quickly. Getting too excited, guys. Okay, so my favorite dinosaur personally is a Triceratops. And one thing that I find very interesting is there's a Triceratops that it resides at the Houston Museum of Natural Science. Um, his name's Lane the Triceratops. And I have a photo of him. I can pull it up. I just muted myself, sorry. Okay, sorry. This is Lane the Triceratops. Um, he is like a fully like articulated skeleton, like it's not a replica. He's like actually in there, which I think is very cool. Um, he has like the most complete like toes or foot bones um, for a Triceratops fossil or like fossilized skeleton. So that has helped people uh, have a better idea of how Triceratops like stood and walked and stuff. Too many things on my screen. Sorry, I'm getting lost. Okay, sorry. Okay, so Lane the Triceratops, and he's chilling in Houston. Um, he also is significant because he was found with like many feet of like preserved patches of skin. Um, so like as you can imagine, that's like extremely rare to find with dinosaurs. Um, I think they call dinosaurs that are found with skin, they call them like dino mummies. Um, yeah, so I believe he has the like most amount of preserved skin than any other dinosaur fossil. This like has helped us to understand more what a triceratops would look like when they were alive, roaming the earth. After we discovered Lane the Triceratops, we learned that his skin was like a lot different than we previously thought. Um, the underside is like similar to a crocodile, and then the rest is covered in like small scales. And then there are also some more like random irregular shapes. Um, I don't know if I have a photo of it, but some of the shapes have like small holes in the center or like pores. So some people speculate that the Triceratops had like quills, but that is like entirely speculation at the moment, as far as I'm aware. Hasn't been like scientifically confirmed. Let me share this photo of his skin. I hope you can see that fine. But yeah, you can see like the texture, his like scales and stuff. It's so cool. What a cool guy. Um, keep getting lost in my tabs. Okay, so yeah, I need to calm down and stop talking about Triceratops. But yeah, there are a lot of other people online who are really abnormal about dinosaurs, like myself, particularly like other autistic people, because um, I like don't know because I've never not been autistic, but supposedly autistic people like things a lot more strongly. So I do really love dinosaurs. And I also love Triceratops very much. Lane is just, he's just the goat of dinosaur fossils. Also, just one last thing. I found this kind of funny, so I just wanted to share with you guys. But they believe that the T-Rex, its like running speed was probably about the same as like a human because they were like too big, so they can run fast. But yes, I really like dinosaurs, and there are many other people online. It's like I don't know if you've seen um like K-pop stands on Twitter. It's like kind of like that, but for dinosaurs, like dinosaur fan accounts. Yeah, that's I'm not gonna go into that, but that's all I have to say.
Woo! Good work. I was hoping you were gonna ask like who's when you're asking who likes the pterodactyl, I was ready to hold up my hand because I also like Triceratops. As a kid, he was my favorite. He always won over he was always him versus the T-Rex. My toys were
He's
those.
the goat.
Yeah, he always won. Like I never had, oh no, he lost and got eaten. No, not in my mind. They look so cool. Anyway, excellent
Have
work.
a bigger grill. I think some Triceratops fossils were found with like partially healed T-Rex bites and stuff, so it's like kind of cool to see.
Mm. Wild to think if they had quills or something like that. I
Yeah,
really
like a
wonder
like
what they
big
look like.
hedgehog.
Yeah. With like that's a cool that's an that it makes I want to know. Somebody needs to invent a time machine. That's your next assignment. And it's purely for this. That's the only thing I want to use it for. I don't want to ruin anything else. Anyway, good work. Anybody else giving speeches tonight? Think that was it? All right, we're good. So Thursday is the very last time to do any makeup speeches. So if you're sitting in this room and you're like, oh, but I have to make one up. You can't do it next week because next week is finals. So if you end up in that spot where you need to give a speech, but you missed it, talk to me and I'll figure out a way to get you some points. But if you want to get all the points, uh, if you're missing a speech, perform it Thursday. Let me know at the beginning of class. Um, Awesome. So let's shift gears to talk about. I think actually before I was going to do that, I think I just saw a message from Andrew asking about tomorrow's video challenge. Yes, let's talk about that, but not just yet because it's linked into what we're talking about this week. And so I want to jump into rhetoric. Let's talk about that. So those last three speeches were very educational, very informative. I didn't really feel like I was being persuaded to like Star Wars or like Triceratops. I just like them both already, I guess. But what if they wanted to persuade us to like them? What's the difference? What on earth is the difference between those speeches and what we just did? So let's jump right into it. I got a video for us to watch, which is going to define rhetoric. So the plan is we're going to watch this video together. He's going to define rhetoric, give us some examples, some ideas while he's watching it. He's going to end his video with a question. How do you want to be more persuasive in your speaking? That is a question you're going to be answering at the end of the video in small groups talking about it. So that's what I want you to be thinking about while we watch it, is that question. What makes something persuasive versus anything else? And then how can you be more persuasive in your life? There we go. Let's watch. Oh, I didn't do the share sound. All right.
This week, we're going to define the term rhetoric. It's a key term in the area of communication, my area. We'll give some background on it and talk about how we see rhetoric in our lives today. I'm Alex Lyon. Be sure to check out any of my online classes at the Communication Coach Academy. I'll put a link to that in the description below this video. My working definition of rhetoric is the number one, art of persuasive speaking or writing, and number two, the effective use of language, arguments, and various kinds of support to inform, motivate, or persuade an audience. The word rhetoric, though, has a certain connotation when we hear it used in everyday conversation. You might hear somebody, for example, dismiss a politician's message as, oh, that's just rhetoric, as if to say that those are just words that sound good on the surface, but ultimately have no substance to back them up. But the roots in this area of study have quite a rich history and a lot of depth. In school, you see rhetoric classes in English departments, and in my area, communication. You'll sometimes hear rhetoric referred to as oratory or persuasive speaking. Rhetoric is one of the oldest fields of study in human history, and its roots go back as early as about 2400 BC. The field came together really at the confluence of two rivers that joined into one turbulent, powerful river. And in one river, we have the sophists. In school, you might hear names of various sophists like Protagoras, Gorgias, or Isocrates. And I'm going to oversimplify this a lot, but these sophists were popular, paid teachers who taught their version of persuasive speaking. Now, these teachers claimed that they taught the weighty principles of things like virtue, wisdom, and justice. But critics say that the sophists mainly taught students the art of speaking eloquently and cleverly, but in a way that did not really provide the substance, the rigor, and the depth that the teachers promise.
So just to interrupt his video real quick, just want to make sure that you understand something. The sophists, you know that word. You've probably heard it in two really important ways. One is when we refer to something as sophisticated. When we say something sophisticated, it means that it is fancy. It means that it looks intelligent, but it's not necessarily complicated. It's not necessarily a compliment, right? Something being sophisticated doesn't exactly mean it is what it appears to be. So it's kind of a clever use of that. But the other way that you've heard this word used is when we call somebody a sophomore in school. That's where we get this term, is they're a sophomore, and we call somebody who's acting like one, we call them sophomoric. That is somebody who thinks they know everything but doesn't. So the reason that's used in school to refer to the second grade in America, that refers to the second of the 4 years of high school. And that's because there's a problem. If you're a teacher, you can see this, that when somebody shows up in high school, just like college, when they're a freshman, they're aware that they don't know anything, they're fresh. But once they learn anything at all, they can start to become very confident in what they think they know. And that happens about year 2 in both college and in high school, where students end up thinking they are very wise because they know. It's also called 101ism, if you've heard that used to refer to college, the college experience. But it's when people have taken a 101 course and now they're like, come home for Christmas break and they're psychoanalyzing their whole family because they took Psychology 101. I did that. I don't know if you guys did, but I did that. So that was during my sophomore period. We call that sophomoric. Wise fool is another way what the term means. So it's important to understand because he's going to compare these to really well-known names of philosophers And these two groups come together to create what we currently are, what you're learning right now in this class. All of this is from those guys. So part of the roots, half of it is truly built on this foundation of sounding and looking intelligent and eloquent. So that is a big part of, it's always been a big part of Western public speaking, is sounding and looking like you know what you're doing. The other side will bring the actual substance, but just so you know, that's where that term comes from. Back to it, Lion.
The Sophists may not have delivered on all of their promises, but they did contribute to a body of work around the art of speaking eloquently and persuasively, which is still a really important contribution. In the other river, you have key historical figures like Plato, Aristotle, Cicero, who added more depth and systematic thinking to that conversation about how to speak ethically, logically, and persuasively. In short, these philosophers added more of the substance and rigor that the Sophists may have lacked. So these two rivers came together in a turbulence. These two historical groups, the Sophists and the philosophers, debated each other, they pushed each other's thinking, and ultimately both groups provided the body of water or the body of work that represents the earliest theories of communication, expression, and argumentation. They didn't all get along and agree, but these players, and many others I didn't mention, form the foundation of the field we now call rhetoric. They did this at a time when the world's first democracies were taking shape, and they helped put communication-based skills at the center of society's governments and communities. It was perhaps the first time that the way you represented your ideas and yourself in public forums through persuasive communication meant almost as much as the strength of your armies. The field of rhetoric, in part, is why we have expressions today like the pen is mightier than the sword. These early rhetoricians showed us in many societies that communication was king. Jump forward to today. We see principles of rhetoric in our writing classes as they teach us how to use language and form arguments for maximum influence. We see rhetoric taught in classes like argumentation and debate, public speaking, and the study of free speech and politics. Some of those classes take students all the way back. Other classes include new writings and new scholars. In fact, there's no way to even scratch the surface in a short video like this. I'm skipping over literally thousands of years. On TV or online, you see people doing sometimes a breakdown of an important speech or a presidential debate. Those experts may have a background in rhetoric. Students who study this area of communication sometimes become authors or speechwriters. They might go into teaching, professional speaking. They might become trainers of various sorts or go into government work. Many law students start as undergraduate communication majors because they want to learn how to stand up and speak persuasively and debate in front of people. Some rhetoric students go into marketing or business of various types. We see the full range of politicians, business people, and companies using principles of rhetoric to communicate their message in the most compelling way possible on TV, online, and in person. What practical insights can we take away from this? First, the term does not mean words without substance. Rhetoric is a rich, complex, and historic area of study. Second, these teachers and philosophers showed us that persuasive speaking is not necessarily a natural-born talent, but it's a learnable set of skills. You can take classes and get better with practice. That was their whole point. Third, communication is a driving force in our society. The ability to tell your story, to advocate, and get a message out is practically mandatory these days. So the study of rhetoric is more relevant and more sophisticated than it has ever been. Question of the day: how would you like to get better at using communication persuasively in your life? I'd love to.
Yeah. let's talk about that. How would you like to? So, thinking about that, the roots of rhetoric, what it is. Hopefully, now you're thinking about argumentation and being persuasive in general. So, the next thing I want to do is to put you into small groups to talk about that. In your life, what is your careers you're going into? How does being persuasive, how can you imagine being persuasive helping you in the careers you're going into? With the people you know, your personal relationships, and in anything else going on in your personal life that you want to talk to your small group about. I want to be thinking about that. Give you a chance to talk. It's also a good chance to stretch while you're having this conversation with your group because we've been sitting for a good hour now. So here we go. Let's do this for. I don't want to talk forever. Let's do this. I'm going to call you back at 7:20. All right. If your group gets done talking, feel free to go to the bathroom, but I'll call you back at 7:20. I'm back and I'm going to be like, excellent. Let's get.
Are you tired of juggling multiple devices just to get through your day? Imagine if there was one tool that could do it all: dry your hair, heat your food, and even defrost your car on those cold, chilly mornings. Meet the Multi Heater Pro, the world's first all in one heat solution. This isn't just any hair dryer, it's a multifunctional powerhouse. Now,
Hello there. My name is Hannah Lynch. She really. Hello there. My name is Hannah Lynch, certified classy coffee cup designer and coffee connoisseur.
Oh my God, these vocalics on both of them. I can't wait to show these guys. Oh, close. Hmm. I just read your questions, Andrew. I'll make sure I address them. Good questions. Thank you. Mm-mm-mm. Got about 10 seconds. There we go. Hey everybody, welcome back. Welcome back. So, let's jump into our upcoming assignments. So, how to be persuasive. There's pieces to it, lots of pieces we're going to talk about tonight. Some of them, we're going to talk about some of them on Thursday. But before we jump into that, let's look at the assignments you have coming up, just so that we know exactly what we're talking about, and you can ask any questions you have about those. First, you have an assignment due tomorrow night. You have give a sales pitch assignment. So let's look at that together, and then conveniently, we have 2 examples that have already been submitted that are really good. So let's look. So here we go. Yeah, you're laughing. They're good. So this one is give a sales presentation, right? So that makes a lot of sense for persuasive speech. So for this, you need to choose something in your home, an object of some kind. It totally doesn't matter what it is, because you are going to dream up a new name and a new use for that object. So it could be like, behold my X-ray goggles. Woo! Do you want to buy them? You can even see through them. They're that X-ray. So whatever, you come up with something, right? It could be like I always think of the Rick and Morty, that weird thing with it could be anything. So you come up with a name, and then you sell it to us in some way, right? So like I say, find a place in your home, set up your laptop or recording device, whatever it is, and I want you to record yourself trying to sell us the object, right? Tell us what it is, what it does, how amazing it is. Use your vocalics and kinesics to enhance your pitch, and tell a story about how it was used. Think of this as performing a commercial for it, right? So in doing this, my guess is, I'm going to stop screen sharing. My guess is that you are going to demonstrate a lot of the skills that I'm going to try and teach you how to do just already. And that's what happened in the ones that are already there. So let's take a look at those. We have 2 examples. Kayla and Hannah both showed us one, and I want to watch these a little bit with you guys. We're not going to watch well, we could watch the whole thing. We'll see. But this is, yeah. As we watch these, I'm glad that Hannah's on board, and this is good. So as we watch these, I want you guys to be thinking about, right, what about these is making this so dang attractive? Like, why am I interested in this? Why is my curiosity piqued? Why am I listening to this? Same thing happens when you watch commercials too. What's going on? Well, you guys both kind of nailed it. So let's watch.
Well, let's talk about the multi-heater's pros of juggling. Are you tired of juggling multiple devices just to get through your day? Imagine if there was one tool that could do it all. Dry your hair, heat your food, and even defrost your car on those cold, chilly mornings. Meet the Multi-Heater Pro, the world's first all-in-one heat solution. This isn't just any hair dryer, it's a multifunctional powerhouse. Now let's talk about the
Now I'm going to stop right there, because I want you guys to go ahead and watch that on your own time and all that. But let's already dig into what did Kayla just do that was so good? And it was really good. You caught us with your vocalics and kinesics right away, and you kept our attention. That was rich, right? That was not monotone, not boring. And I think you guys all know instinctively that doing so keeps everybody's attention more. So you nailed it with that. And then you also started with telling us why we need it. You started with a good rhetorical question in the beginning. You had a hook. And this is what we've already talked about doing. And then you jumped into why we need it, and then what the solution is, right? So there's a solution benefit situation that you're giving us, which, if any of you have done the reading already for this week, you know that for this speech, this speech has to have structure. And I'm going to show you 4 different options, but that's one of them. You're already doing one. That's it. That's one of the structures that you can choose for your entire persuasive speech. So bam. Taylor, that was really good. So let's look at Hannah's now too. I am impressed with both of you guys. When
Multi-Heater's pros, 3 key.
Yeah, you guys both just went for it, and I appreciate
Hello
that.
there.
Oh no,
My name is Hannah Lynn.
because that just starts as soon as I play it. You heard it, Anna. Yeah. Okay, let's go here. I'm gonna screen share and then start it, because I think it just like pops up. All right, you guys ready?
Hello there. My name is Hannah Lynch, certified classy coffee cup designer and coffee connoisseur. Tired of basic, awkward coffee mugs like this one? Well then, I've got the coffee mug for you.
All right. That was all I really need to show from that because you're already doing the same thing, right? Do you have a problem? Let me solve that problem for you. But you added something also, you made it your own in that you started by telling us how impressive you are. You were like, "Hey, you don't just want to buy this coffee cup from anybody. You want to buy it from a connoisseur. I know what I'm doing." You established what's called ethos right in the very beginning and told us that we should pay attention to you because you're the expert. That's very, very good. All of this that you guys are doing, we're going to talk about today. And I'm going to be like, hey, now in the future when you do it, it's because I taught you. But there's an excellent chance this is all stuff you already know. This class is a lot of that. But most of us don't have it necessarily codified. We might not have everything written down. We don't know the terms, but you guys know how to do good persuasion already, and you're already nailing it. I'm excited to see everybody else's, but that's the assignment to do tomorrow night. Make a commercial. Both of those are perfect. Andrew had a question like, can we add text to the screen? Absolutely. You can add music. You can literally do whatever you want with this one. Just do your best to sell us something. Yeah. You want to share it right now?
Sure. I'm gonna put it in the chat, but I had okay, that formatted really badly. Apologies. I had the idea of doing like if everyone's ever seen like the red copper pan cooking commercial, that type of vibe. That's kind of the vibe I was going for.
Nice.
I feel like it channeled it pretty well, but we'll see how that goes.
I'm excited to see it. Yeah.
I am too,
Have fun
yeah.
with this one, guys. This is your last video challenge. Have fun with it. You'll notice the instructions are really just to make it and do your best. So if you're like, you know what, I am just going to hold a plunger and say, this is an old plunge and you need to buy it, that'll also work. But I want you guys to just try and have as much fun with this as you can. It's your last one of these. I think you already are. So I'm excited to see that. So the other assignment is your next speech. Let's look at that. So let's go back over here. I'm going to screen share again. As I go over the instructions with this, if you want to interrupt me at any point, feel free. If I don't hear you, if I don't see you waving or whatever. But here's the assignment. I know you guys should have all looked at it already, but just in case, let's go through it ourselves, go through it together. Can I minimize this thing on the side? Yes, I can. So first off, I'm trying to sell you to be a salesperson. So I'm like, hey, do you want to be persuasive? Here's why you need to be persuasive. The purpose of the speech: to champion a cause. I mentioned this last week. This isn't just a generic persuasive speech. You're championing a cause. You need to have a solution of some kind for something that you're sharing with us. So it's 7 minutes, give or take 1 minute, persuasive in nature. So we're going to talk about the Aristotelian appeals today, but they're ethos, logos, pathos. You need to make sure that you include each one, obviously. And a lot like so far we've talked about in these speeches, if you're like, after you perform your speech, if you're like, hey, I included pathos, and I'm like, I don't think I saw it, I'm not going to rewatch your speech to find that spot that I missed, unless I'm like really wrong. Feel free to tell me. But if I go through the whole work of rewatching your speech to find out that I'm right, then your speech probably gets regraded because I'm a human and that will piss me off. So instead, if you're like, how do I make sure that he sees my pathos? You include it more than once. That's the easiest way, is to actually pack your whole speech full of it. Just like vocalics and kinesics, right? Most of you have gotten my feedback by now where I'm like, yeah, I don't even count your vocalics and kinesics. I just go, oh, they got it. Yep, it's going. It's the whole speech. That's good. You want to be using all of these through the whole speech too, right? Or it needs to be obvious what you're doing. So pathos, ethos, and logos are pretty specific things. It'll be clear generally for using them. Pathos is a more tricky one, but we'll get to that. But I want to make sure you include all those in your speech. If you are worried, you're like, are these in my speech? And you want to like either show me a video of your speech before you perform, have me read it before you perform, or practice with me, just talk to me and we can set that up. The other thing, sources. Your speech requires 3 sources that you need to verbally cite out loud, just like you did in your last speech. The last thing here, visual aids. So you can use a visual aid with this speech, but I want to see your face big as much as possible. So if you're screen sharing at all, just make sure that you unscreen share as soon as you don't need it. So we pop it in and out. This is different than the last one we just did. I don't want to have it up the whole time. So we want to make sure that we see you as much as possible. It's your final, right? So here's how this works. First, you pick a cause of some kind. So this could be, this could be like a problem that you see in the world that you're going to suggest a solution for. This could also be a problem that you see in the world that you're going to suggest an organization for, like a nonprofit. You could be like, hey, poverty is a real thing and I hate it. So I have my solution and it's called Everybody Moves In With Me. That's possible. Or you could be like, it's called, there's probably one of these over here. It's called Vocation Village. I don't know. I give you all kinds of options here. So pick, you could use one of those, right? The other thing about this list that's useful for you guys is since I am requiring 3 sources to be cited, if you pick any of these topics that are listed down here, every one of these is a link to something you could use as a source, right? If you're like, I want to talk about gender equality. Well, this takes us over to the United Nations where they talk about gender equality. There's a source right there. Bam. Done and done. Like, oh, thing. You're covering up my tab. Oh my God. Oh my God. Can I go this way? No. How about if I go like that and like that? There we go. We're back. So that makes sense as far as picking a cause and then having a solution for it. Anybody have any questions about how that part works? What you're doing? The main thing I don't want is just to hear how terrible the planet Earth is. And that's it, the end. So I don't want that. I'm already worried about that. I want a solution. So even if it's a solution that you think is awesome that I disagree with, I still want to hear some solutions. So that's just basically the gist of this speech. Make sense? Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay. I'm going to go back over here. The next step I have here is define a goal. So this is important because your speech needs to have a point, right? So sometimes students will pick a problem and they'll pick the, like, it's hunger, and here's this food bank organization, and they're just like, here. And I'm like, no, what's your goal? Do you want us to volunteer at that food bank? Do you want us to, what do you want us to do with what you're doing in your speech? So you need a goal with your speech as well. That's often a call to action at the end of your speech, some kind of like, so now that you know that the killer whales off the coast of Washington are a unique species and that they're endangered, here's what you can do to actually help because they are just as intelligent as us. Like you could do something like that, but you have a call to action at the end. You have a goal. Step 3, write that strong opening. So this is the same as the last speech. You need to have a hook, some type of way to catch the audience's attention. Then you want to offer persuasive evidence, right? So I am right because blank. Give us that evidence. Tell us why you're right. And this is where ethos, focus, and pathos is going to come in. There's videos here if you want to learn more about those on your own that we aren't going to be watching in class. This video we will be watching Thursday, so don't watch it ahead of time. But Mr. Rogers did a really cool thing. He persuaded our government was going to cut PBS funding from $20 million to 10. And Mr. Rogers argued and instead got the budget raised to 22 million with a 7-minute speech. That's pretty impressive. So we're going to study that guy on Thursday because that's really cool that he did that. And like I say here, step 5 is end with a call to action. Like, what do you want us to do? What is it? The one call to action that I want to make sure that you're careful about is just raising awareness. If your call to action is, so now, yeah, whales are dying and it's really sad, but now you're at least aware. That's not a call to action. We need something more than that, right? So awareness only works if the problem you're solving is one that awareness can solve, right? So, which is some problems can be solved through us all being more aware. Like if your problem is none of people are looking at me, and now that you're all looking at me, you're aware. I solved that problem. I don't think that problem's really big enough, but it's hard to think of problems that awareness alone can solve, right? So be thinking what you're going to be judged on all this. So this is your final, right? So any questions about how all that works? How this speech is going to basically run? Cool. Let's watch an example. So I have 4 examples linked in here, but tonight I want to watch one together. My favorite. So, so for this speech, let's watch it together and analyze it. But I want to give you some setup for the situation. So this guy was a video game design student. It's going to be pretty obvious as soon as it starts. We're like, oh yeah, he looks like he would be in the video game design program. He was. And he hated my class. He was very upfront with me about it from day one. He was like, I don't want to be here. I hate public speaking. I'm terrified. So you need to meet with me before every speech so I can practice. And I was like, oh, do I need to? Okay, sure, let's do it. And we did. And he did so well. So he hated giving this speech. He hated that he had to do it. I didn't tell him to pick this topic, but he does an incredibly good job. So I want to watch it and analyze it. There's one other thing that he does that's especially impressive. So some of the topics you might want to talk about might be weird. You might be worried, like, how do I argue in favor of prostitutes' rights without sounding like a really creepy person? How do you do that? Well, he does it. So let's watch and see, like, what did he do right? How did that actually work? Here we go. Okay, well, I am going to mute myself. Start when you feel ready.
Okay. So, just as a quick disclaimer and trigger warning, I will be talking about sexual assault and rape and violence. So, just to let you guys know. I remember when I was 18 years old, my family went to Taiwan for the summer just to visit some relatives. And one day I was hanging out with my 25-year-old cousin at the time, and he asked me, hey, do you want to see something funny? And at first, I thought he was going to take me to like a bar because the legal age of drinking in Taiwan is 18. But no, he said, I'm going to take you to a sex store where they sell adult videos, porn magazines, and sex toys. Like, at first I was thinking to myself, why? But then after I'm like, I have nothing else better to do, so just lead the damn way. So the location of this sex store was not in some like shady back alley. No, it was like in the middle of the city in broad daylight, like on the second floor of a building. And like at the store, it was like filled with customers. Like, and here's the thing, every single one of those customers, they didn't feel like insecure or like ashamed of being there. They felt like pretty nonchalant about it. And I kid you not, I saw like an old man with like a walking like stick, just like casually browsing the porn like magazine section. It was like to me, I was like, oh, okay, well, this is just normal, I guess. So in Taiwan, porn is legal, but prostitution is illegal. And this is somewhat similar to the laws that we have here in the USA. And there are a lot of people who think and believe sex work should be illegal. And similar to Sammy's topic, I'm here today to try and convince you why we should decriminalize sex work, because the people who do sex work deserve worker and human rights. Now, sex work is defined as the exchange of consensual sex for money or goods between two adults. And in the United States of America, sex work is illegal except in the state of Nevada, where it's legal in a few counties. So if sex work is considered illegal in the majority of America, why is porn legal? Well, the reason why is because porn stars are considered as paid actors, while prostitution is paid for sex. Not only that, because porn is being filmed by a camera, it makes porn considered as an art film. And not only that, it's protected by the first, and because it's considered an art film, it's protected by the First Amendment of the US Constitution, which is the right to free speech. So why is having consensual sex on camera for money legal, but consensual sex off camera for money illegal? It's absolutely hypocritical. And why is it so wrong to give rights to sex workers who want to do the job off camera? It's important to acknowledge that sex work is a dangerous field, and by criminalizing it, we are making it worse. The Human Rights Watch organization researched and found throughout various countries that criminalization has consistently made sex workers more susceptible to violence, assault, murder, and rape. The outlaw of sex work also hurts their ability to seek justice for crimes against them in the fear of being arrested. In fact, in one study of 783 sex workers, they reported that 70% of them never disclosed their occupation to a healthcare professional, with one woman explaining that she was raped and was afraid to be judged by the hospital and that they would call the police. Meaning, because of the nature of the job, sex workers have less access to health care. And speaking of the police, sex workers are more prone to police violence and abuse because of criminalization. In one 2008 study, nearly 1 in 5 sex workers said that they had been asked for sex by a police officer, with one respondent saying that she had been made to perform sexual favors to avoid being charged with prostitutions. Furthermore, a couple of years ago, according to an article by AP News, federal agents allegedly engaged in 17 sexual encounters with women engaging in massage parlors in a sting operation. All of these heinous actions enacted by the police face no reparations or justice for the victims because in many U.S. states, it is not specifically illegal to have sex for their jobs during a sting operation. This basically means that police officers are allowed to have sex for their jobs legally in order to stop people having sex for their jobs. If that does not sound ridiculous or abusive, then I don't know what you would consider as just crossing the line or just unacceptable in any way. Not only that, using condoms puts sex workers at greater risk because the Human Rights Watch found in a 2012 report that police and prosecutors used a sex worker's possession of condoms as evidence to support prostitution charges. Because condoms can be used as evidence for prosecution, many workers are reluctant to carry them for the fear of being arrested. Thus, forcing sex workers to engage in sex without protection and putting them at a heightened risk of contracting HIV or any other STDs. Empathy and sympathy are their strength. They're not weaknesses. And being able to put yourselves in the shoes of a sex worker, or at the very least understand the position and perspective they're in, you'll come to find out that due to the stigma of their jobs, like everything is against their like favor, and like they're not even treated as human beings, like with thoughts of their own situation. It feels helpless, and it's frustrating to see people be viewed less because of their job, because their job is not seen as valuable or important or not contributing anything to the society or economy. It's frustrating. So what can be done? So what can be done to help sex workers? We can start by viewing sex work as an actual job. It's a way for people to put food on the table, and it's a way for people to survive. Some of you may be wondering, aren't there some sex workers that are part of human trafficking? That you're absolutely right. However, the main issue is that sex work often gets conflated with human trafficking. It's the assumption that no sex worker has ever entered the trade by choice. People from a variety of backgrounds do it for a variety of reasons. Just like Nikki said, human trafficking is a massive abuse of human rights and a crime, and any form of human trafficking should be investigated and prosecuted and have reparations. However, despite just assuming that sex work is human trafficking, you're perpetually reinforcing the stigma of sex work and marginalizing an already marginalized group. And an important step towards destigmatizing sex work is to decriminalize it. Decriminalization is the means to remove the criminal penalties for buying and selling of sexual acts, and this includes laws targeting clients and brothel owners. Decriminalization goes a long way with recognizing sex work as work and protecting the rights of sex workers through labor law, workplace health, and safety regulations. Sex workers can also use the justice system to seek remedy for discrimination and abuse. They can also seek help from healthcare workers or friends with less fears of consequences. And even when sex work is decriminalized, the prostitution of minors and human trafficking can and should remain criminal acts. And not only that, by decriminalizing sex work, you're also helping fighting against human trafficking by allowing human trafficking victims come forward and feel more comfortable in reporting. And also, sex workers no longer have to feel like the consequences of having a criminal record. And here's the thing, we can see the positive effects of decriminalization by looking at the country of New Zealand. In 2003, New Zealand decriminalized prostitution. And in a 2008 study, they found that after decriminalization, sex workers felt more comfortable in reporting abuse and were more able to negotiate safer sex practices and refuse unwanted clients. And in New Zealand, any sex worker can work for themselves or in a brothel, and brothel owners have to have special certification and verify that their workers are over 18 and use safe sex practices. Not only that, sex workers in New Zealand have successfully sued over sexual harassment that they experience on the job. Now, decriminalizing decriminalizing sex work is not the perfect solution, but it's a first and massive step towards making sex work safer for the people who do it. And here's the thing, decriminalization is on like, it needs to be done on the federal level. Like we as individuals can't do a lot, but so like, what can we do as individuals? Well, I would say you could like donate to nonprofit organizations that like advocate and believe in decriminalizing sex work. But a lot of us may not have the money to spare or have extra money to donate. So here's what you can do. If you do know of a sex worker or encounter a sex worker, change your attitude. Like, just be respectful and don't judge their occupation. And not only that, if they ask for help or are in need of assistance, listen to them and do what you can to help them. Because at the end of the day, they're still human beings and they should be treated as one. And by just like listening to sex workers and like being respectful of them, you're hoping, like, in a way, advocating for destigmatizing sex work. Thank you.
That little ending tells you everything about how he felt at the end of that. That took all of himself to do that. So let's talk about that, right? Yeah, right. Thank you. I agree. He didn't hate me. He just hated this class. He did not want to be taking public speaking. Let's talk about that. What that speech. It's one of, I think, the most skilled speeches I've had come through my class. Why did he stuttered? He had terrible eye contact as well. What's going on with that? Why did I like it so much? Well, it was persuasive, right? Let's start with right there. It's pretty persuasive. What about it made it persuasive? Can anybody guess any elements? Andrew.
I mean, you could definitely tell he was passionate about the issue at hand. I mean, rightfully so. He kept a fairly almost aggressive attitude, but I don't see how you could talk about that and not be pissed off about it. So that I feel like that was the right tone, because any other tone would be a bit of a red flag.
Yeah, I think it's 100% you're right. Yeah, his passion comes through perfectly. He sounds like he's arguing with us, but he's not. He clearly cares. So when we talk about, we're gonna tonight, I definitely want to cover ethos, logos, pathos, but the pathos of ethos, that's passion. And so that was, like I said, I didn't have to mark, did he do it once? It was through the entire speech. There's never a part in that speech where I'm like, oh yeah, but you didn't seem to care. No, he clearly cared a lot. Interestingly, why did he care? Did you catch? Francis.
It started from an experience when he was young. So he had that firsthand experience.
No. No, yeah, he started with a story about going to a porn shop, but that was just a link. That was just his opening hook, right? That's not why he cared so much. I don't know why he cared so much. He never says in his speech. He never tells us, which is the exact opposite of what I'm going to teach you to do. I'm going to teach you that you need to tell us why you care so much, because you need to establish credibility, which is ethos. So pathos is the passion, ethos is the credibility, right? So, but if you're going to talk about something like prostitution, I think he threaded that difficult needle perfectly. Like, how do you say, if he was to start it by saying, so I've seen many prostitutes and they have a hard life, everybody's immediately thinking something else. Nobody's listening to his argument. No matter, he could be possessed by Cicero and everybody's like, how are the prostitutes, though? You mentioned that you've been with how many? And I need details. Because nobody cares anymore. Sex is on the table. We're not talking about your cause. It's out the window, buddy. So he didn't say that. I don't know if, like, for all I know from his speech, he's a virgin. He just comes across as caring. Sounds like he's seen how fucked up this all is and he's mad about it. Perfect tone, perfect ethos, right? You want to be credible, not creepy. He did a really good job of just, that's a knife blade, and I have not seen it repeated since. Hannah, what's your thought?
I just kind of had like a little bit of a question. So, like his energy, you know, what we're talking about with this passion and stuff, like it's kind of like what Andrew said. Like he toes a really kind of fuzzy line between being really aggressive and
Mhm.
being passionate. And so like when we do these speeches, like for me, I don't know what I'm going to do, but I know I'm not going to come across like that kind of in your face, like
Yeah.
aggressive. But it's like for him and for his subject matter, that worked, I think, to an extent. But I feel like there's a balance to be had, like depending on who you like, I guess who you are, whether it's me or someone else giving the speech and the subject matter, like, because I can see how that sort of heightened passion can alienate an audience. I don't know. I'm not
Yeah.
trying to take away from the fact that he did kill it, because he did kill it,
Mhm.
but you know what I mean? I don't
I
know.
do. You're trying to jump ahead to the part where I explain pathos. Give me about 20 minutes. Yeah, no, it's a very good point. You're going to need to establish pathos in your speech. I'm not going to explain it all right now. Is this a tangent, Andrew? Because we're on one already, so I'm not going on a second one. So pathos, yes, you're going to need to find a way to manifest that in your speech. Probably won't look the same as his. If you all yell your speeches at me, it won't work at all, especially if you're trying to like do something that is not like that. But pathos refers to a whole lot of stuff. So let's flip back to ethos. So he established that through his own credibility, but he didn't do it the way that I'm going to teach you to do it, right? And then logos. The last thing he added in there is logic, is another way to think of logos. For your speeches, it's going to be the same as his, I think, but that there's two big ways. There's a lot of ways to incorporate all of these. Two big ways that he incorporated logos. One was that he cited like 6 sources. So that's very strong. It's also ethos. So kind of double dipping. He's bringing in credibility. Hey, according to Human Rights Watch, then you're like, oh, that's an organization that's more important than what's his name? Him? Like, cool. Now I'm listening because somebody more important is talking, right? So that's one thing he did with logos. The other thing is that he actually used logic to argue, and this is something that a lot of students don't do, but I think that you should do if you can. His arguments of like, isn't it stupid that porn is legal and prostitution is illegal? Is a really strong argument. Like that's extraordinarily dumb that in this country that I'm currently sitting in, if someone's filming you having sex for money, that's legal. If no one's filming you having sex for money, that's illegal. That I have cognitive dissonance like crazy about that. That makes no sense to me. I hate it. So, logic, he's using logic, right? His other one that he did was cops when he talked about the police using having sex with prostitutes to catch them having sex. Mm. Yeah, my cognitive dissonance makes me want to hurt cops now. So that's insane, right? So that's using logic. That's a really good use of it. One other way he used logic is he used something called a concession. So whatever you're arguing with us, a lot of times people, when you get your topic and you want to argue it with all of us, it's all or nothing in the student's head sometimes. But remember, most things are a little more nuanced. And if you can think of something your opposition would argue that you agree with, disarm them in the middle of your argument by presenting it as your argument. So he did that in his when he said, some people argue that prostitution is human trafficking, right? So him bringing that up and addressing that topic, it disarms the opposition, but it's also more logos. It's more logic that he's adding because he's saying, yeah, you've heard this, but let me logically walk you through why that's not true. But also, human trafficking needs to be punished. He added his pathos to that. Bam. It's really strong. So those are the main things I want you guys to notice. And then his solutions at the end. His solutions demonstrated very clearly that he'd done some audience analysis. If you, for your final solutions, if you're trying to urge this class to give money, then I'm going to be like, my notes to you will probably be, this isn't the best audience to try and squeeze money out of. You're all college students. Most of you are probably broke. Like, I don't think this is right. If I'm going to say, hey guys, don't you want to save the axolotls? They're pretty rare and only in Mexico City. So all of you, if you chip in $100 each, we could probably save them. Is that going to happen in this class? Maybe, but I bet someone's going to not give $100. So do some audience analysis for your solutions, right? Be thinking, even he just blatantly said, he's like, there's organizations you could give to, but I don't think this is the right group for that. So here's some other things we can do. So audience analysis, make sure you do that as well. So I thought it was a good speech, but yeah, clearly it's not the best. What could make it the best? Well, the two things that he needed to add, well, he did add the structure and he did add the ethos, logos, pathos, but things that you need to add are those. So let's talk about those next. For your speech, you need to have structure and then you get, it's 8 o'clock. We're going to talk about structure on Thursday. If you do the reading, you'll be ahead of us. So as far as how to structure your speech, but I don't talk about ethos, logos, and pathos because we keep talking about them, but not. I don't know if I should have jumped to that part in the beginning. Probably should have started the lesson. Let's talk about ethos, logos, and pathos. Probably. How many of you guys know what those are? Well, very good. We're going to get through this fast. Maybe we will. I don't know. If you have any thoughts, please go ahead and speak up. But here we go. Look at this white guy. There he is, Aristotle. Do you know these statues were originally like painted bright colors? They look so much better in marble, I think. Anyway, Aristotle, three-person persuasion. Here we go. Let's go. So the first one is logos. Like I said, logos refers to logic. It's based on like the clarity, the reasoning, your evidence. All of that is logos, right? So in your speech, you need to include logic. This advertisement, I think, is a really good example of logos in advertising because it's not saying pop chips taste good. It's not saying pop chips will make you happy. It's not saying in fact, there's no credibility at question. It's just saying you can eat more. I feel like that's a pretty logo strong ad, right? Do you want to just eat more volume? Eat pop chips. All these ads we're going to look at, let's get some more. Might not necessarily be exactly that. It's up to all of us, their interpretation, but I just like to, if you have a thought, talk about them, but I like to talk about them. This ad here, I don't think it's even true, but it's not arguing anything except just showing you color. It's expecting the reasonableness of Verizon to sell Verizon to you, right? It's not telling you anything other than just showing you logic. It's a good example also, though, of how logic doesn't have to be true or correct to work. I want it in your speeches to be true and correct, but it doesn't have to be. In fact, it's very often effective regardless of that. We're living in a dystopian culture that's based in a lot of that. This ad here, when you see numbers, it's an awful lot of times that's logos at work, right? 80% of bacteria are not on teeth. So you need something that protects 100% of your mouth. That's it. A reasonable person would buy this, right? So using logos in your speech, I want you to make your argument clear and reasonable. Offer proof, evidence of some kind. Make sure you cite it. And if there are good points your opponents have, like I talked about in the example speech, you want to give a concession, right? Those are strong. And then it really helps to have strong critical thinking skills. And the main thing you want to avoid is fallacies. Fallacies is a fun word that just refers to bad logic. So the ways to practice all this and get better, if you're like, how do I get better at critical thinking? Debate things with your friends. That's one solution. Or find something you can debate with your friends and you can both agree on the source. When I was in college, this is going to be really telling. I went to Bible college in Kirkland. So like it was a lot of debates over theology. Yeah, I'm an atheist now, but I have a lot of strong arguments about why I think animals do in fact have souls, based on biblical evidence. None of which do I take to be anything anymore, but I'd spent years in the cafeteria arguing with my friends about things like that. That helps. That sharpens your critical thinking, right? So argue with your friends. You just need to make sure that you have a shared base of reality that you're arguing from. But there's other ways to do it too. You could also do things like Sudoku, Wordle, puzzles. Even though those don't look like you're building critical thinking, you are. Sudoku has nothing to do with numbers. The fact that you're using numbers 1 through 9, there's no math involved. It's all logic. That's what's happening with Sudoku. And then the believing game. This is one of my favorites. I'm going to describe it to you and encourage you to incorporate it in your life at some point. So the believing game is where you ask yourself, you take something you believe. Like, for example, I believe there are probably aliens. I think there are. So then I ask myself, what would need to happen to me to 100%, 180 degrees, change my belief? What would happen? What could happen to me to convince me 100% that aliens are not real, right? That there are none? That starts to get kind of tricky. If you're thinking about that for some of your beliefs and you come to the conclusion that there's nothing that could change your mind, then you don't have a logical belief, you have faith, which is great, but it's not based in anything other than your tenacity. So far as this goes, if you want to practice the believing game, for me to go, what would have to happen for me to believe there are no other aliens? There's nothing else out there at all. Ooh, I think I would need really good technology. Maybe I would need really good technology no, because I'm gonna say like a god telling me that there aren't any aliens, but then I'm gonna be like, well, then who are you? And then I go into the whole loop again, right? So, this kind of thing is really helpful for you to build your own critical thinking. Whatever you believe about aliens and gods and ghosts and monsters, what would change your belief on that? If there's absolutely nothing, then you are not a reasonable creature. So be thinking it through. What could happen, right? It's tough. It's tough, but it's good. It's good practice. So that's using logic. I mentioned fallacies. Fallacies are kind of a super fun tangent from logic. So let's look at those for a minute. Fallacies are bad logic. There are over 200 types of logical fallacies. We're not going to study them all, but we're going to look at seven examples so that you get an idea of what on earth I'm talking about. 6 popular logical fallacies. The first one, ad hominem. This is probably one of the most popular ones of all. This is just when people attack the person, not the issue, right? Like Andrew says, hey, I think that abortion should be illegal. And I say, well, I think you should be illegal. Yeah, that's just an ad hominem argument back. That has nothing to do with, that's not logic at all. It's just an insult, right? So we want to avoid those. And oftentimes in debate groups, when ad hominem shows up, it's a pretty clear sign to the audience that that person's lost. So just something to know about. So that's one. Ad hominem means against the person. Slippery slope. This assumes the worst possible chain of cause and effect. So, like, for example, my mom used to say things like, Steve, if you don't clean your bedroom, it's gonna get super messy. You won't be able to find anything in it. You're gonna end up not being able to find your homework for school. You're gonna end up failing out of school, and then you're gonna work at McDonald's. So you better go clean your room, otherwise it ends with you homeless. Something like that. And I, as a kid, would be like, that feels like a bit of an extreme assumption that that's where this is all heading. But now I know it's called a slippery slope. You can kind of get why. Parents love to use them. I don't know why. There we go. So let's go to the next one. We have ad hominem, slippery slope. The next one is bandwagon. So this is everybody's doing it. So it's correct, right? So we all grew up dealing with this. We're probably still dealing with this. FOMO kind of makes it tough. But bandwagon, it doesn't make it true just because everyone is doing it, right? If this were true, then policies would never change, right? We need to have the small minority that is correct to shout down the majority an awful lot of the time. Number 4, scare tactic. This is creating fear as evidence, right? So it's not the same thing as presenting evidence that is scary. That's not scare tactics, right? If I'm like, hey guys, we need to do something about global warming or weather's gonna go nuts. That's not scare tactic, that's true. It's just a scary situation. Hey guys, our country really needs to do something or we're gonna end up in a fascist regime. I don't think that's scare tactic. I think that's probably based in a bit more reality. However, if I used it as evidence, right? If the fear I'm using is the evidence. So, hey guys, I'm scared of our current government situation, so therefore we need to make me the new president. Like using that fear as evidence that something else is true. That's scare tactic, and that is highly effective. Highly effective, but it's still wrong and not correct. It's a logical fallacy. All right, the next one. Number 5 is false cause. This is pretty general, but it just assumes a wrong relationship between cause and effect, right? I think probably the best example would be my baseball team won and I was wearing my lucky underwear, so think we know why they won. Right? That's false cause. Those I don't think those have anything to do with each other. But like baseball in particular, but sports. Baseball though is like so full of this, like superstitious ideas, incredibly full. I have been yelled at so many times by friends who take their sports a bit too seriously, just as I'm like, oh, you think this is going to be a perfect game? Oh my God, everybody in the room wants to burn me alive for saying it. And I'm like, that makes me want to say it more though. But yeah, it's because I'm a horrible person. Anyway, yeah, that's all false cause. Of course it is. Of course it is. You know it is, but it still works. And then the sixth one is red herring. This presents an irrelevant topic to divert attention away from the original issue. So, my mother was an expert at the red herring. So we would be I'd be like, "Hey, my sister is a disaster, and you need to tell her that she is one." And my mom, all of a sudden, in just a couple of sentences, we're talking about my brother instead. How did that just happen? Oh, now we're talking about the thing that I did that I screwed up last week and how I'm in. Wait, when did we start that whole ness of conversations? If you experience somebody who's really deft at bringing up something totally different that has nothing to do with the current topic and you find that you're talking about that, you've been red herringed. Yeah. It's also when people use something like as evidence or to support their argument that has literally nothing to do with what you're talking about, right? Like I'm like saying, hey, we need to save the country. And you're like, yeah, but cheese. And I'm like, do we, yep, red herring, it worked, right? So it's not logical, but it does work. So let's look at some examples of these. So we got six. I'm going to put them back on the screen. We got six popular logical Pharisees, ad hominem, slippery slope, bandwagon, scare tactic, false cause, red herring. Let's look at some examples and see if you guys can guess what they are. Romney's not the solution, he's the problem. Barack Obama put this out. Which one do you guys think this is? I see. Okay, I see Hannah. Feel free to unmute and talk if you want. I can only see five of you, but Hannah's right. It is number one. It's an ad hominem attack. He's just saying Romney's a problem. We don't know why, but this will work if you're on the side of Barack Obama and you really want some of that tribalism to kick in that we talked about last week, the week before that. Yeah, we talked about, right? In groups versus out groups. This is an attempt to create an out group out of Romney. Not logical at all. There's nothing about Romney. I'm embarrassed that Barack Obama did this, but also it worked. Both sides do it. Everybody does this. Let's go next one. Axe body spray. Spray here and here gets you the ladies. What do you guys think about that one?
False
False
cause.
cause.
I agree. Yeah. If you've smelled Axe body spray, you might be tempted to say scare tactic. Yeah, false cause, right? I think that one's totally, oops, I went to hit fed back. It's totally false cause. Axe is not the reason that guy has those women. If he has those women, those were paid to be there. I've met junior hires. I've smelled Axe body spray. It's terrible. How about this one? Smoking isn't just suicide, it's murder.
Fear tactic.
Yeah, right. It's just if you smoke, you will kill your child. If you smoke, you will murder your kid. Is that true? Is that evidence? No, it's fear being used as evidence. An incredible amount of kids grow up in smoking homes and turn out to be things like professors. And I hated it as a kid, but I survived just fine. I'm lucky, but me and my siblings are all fine, right? Most of us grew up with horrible parents smoking in cars with like the window cracked and the cigarettes over here, and they're like, you're dying in the back. Yeah, it didn't work. I didn't die. So it's a scare tactic. If they instead said, hey, you probably have a higher chance of cancer. You should get checked out if you grew up with parents smoking around you. That's true. And that's less scare tactic, right? Because they're not using it as evidence. So let's go back. What about this one? Kids, if you wouldn't eat your cat, why eat a turkey? I think this one's a red herring because you could literally be saying anything in this sentence. You could be, kids, if you wouldn't murder your parents while they sleep, why eat a turkey? Like eating a turkey and eating a cat aren't equivalent to me, aren't related in the slightest. I understand the concept of pets versus farm animals. So this is a red herring, right? It looks like they're related, but they're two animals. It could be, hey, you wouldn't put in anything you want for that red phrase, and it makes the exact same argument. so there's not logic involved, right? This kind of stuff's effective. That's PETA at work. Gross. All right, what about the next one? Anti-God is anti-American. Anti-American is treason. Traitors lead a civil war. This is a real billboard. What is it?
It's a real slippery slope.
It really is, right? If you don't believe in God, we have civil war. Boom, boom. If you don't go to my church, we're all gonna die. Yeah. There's this lunatic atheist part up here that's a little bit ad hominem, just to start, just a touch of ad hominem for icing on the cake, and then a big old cake of crazy slippery slope. No, this one. If you guess bandwagon, I think you're right. The argument is just simply everyone's doing it. 100 million people have eaten these. They're not saying they're good. They're not saying anything. They're not saying it's even going to help you. They're not saying it's going to be good for you. They're just saying everybody is doing it, and you don't want to be the weirdo who's not eating McDonald's, right? So good. Let's move on to pathos now. So anyway, any questions about, actually, let me unscreen share that, but any questions about logical fallacies, how they work, what they are? To avoid them, just try and make sure you have good logic. If you end up using one in your speech, I'll talk to you about it. My feedback will be like, oh wow, we wandered into this territory. It'll be more of a conversation than something you should be terrified about happening. As long as it doesn't look like you're doing it on purpose, right? Don't do that. So that's logos, using logos in your speech. Now pathos. Pathos is not just like passion as you would think of it in the classical sense, but any type of passionate feeling. So it could be sympathy, humor, shock, anger, excitement, disgust, joys. Like this picture here, that's trying to raise a feeling, but it's not necessarily like that student's speech. It's not necessarily like we need to all of anything passionate, as in anything dealing with the emotions, is pathos. So there's a lot of ways to actually incorporate pathos. Does that make sense? Yeah, Hannah, there you are. Does that make sense? So let's look at some examples of pathos in advertisements that you might not think of. This one, I can hear the Sarah McLachlan music playing. There's this porch, there's all these little animals. This is pathos. This is really good pathos, right? None of it's manufactured. Animal cruelty is a real thing. You can stop it. Let's play some music. Pathos. This is highly effective, right? This isn't the same thing as that student did, though. This is trying to trigger your empathy. So he was trying to trigger your empathy, but he's also trying to trigger something else. But this is empathy. How about this one? Smoking kills, so why bother starting? It's got this whole list of all the things that it can do bad for you, right? It's trying to get you to passionately care. Maybe it's a little bit of scare tactics with this picture, but it's also using the actual evidence. So it's tough to say, but I feel like that's some pathos going on. This is also pathos, though. This place looks wonderful. This place looks beautiful. I want to be here. Pathos isn't all negative, right? If you can inspire your audience with this kind of pathos, that I think is more effective than raging at your audience. So there's a reason that this is exactly what's used at the start of every movie. I think that's heaven in the background, right? These hands are about to touch, all this glistening, everything. I want Coke now because I think you go to heaven when you drink one, right? That's pathos. This is also pathos. Yeah, sex is pathos. So if you can get your audience to be thinking about sex in a positive way, that can work, which our speech was kind of a little bit about. But this is also pathos. If you can make your audience laugh, then you have reached them, right? That's also pathos. And it's highly, 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 highly effective. If you can get your audience to laugh along with you, walls come down. In that video we're going to watch on Thursday about Mr. Rogers, they're going to talk about some more about this, but humor is disarming. It's one of the best ways to sneak on in because it also smuggles in some ethos. When you get your audience to laugh, they respect you more, which is kind of wild. So it's just something that we know from studying this. So it's an ethos enhancer. Humor is an ethos enhancer. It makes you look more credible, more in control of what's going on, if you can make the audience actually laugh and enjoy what you're talking about. So that's all pathos. Any questions or thoughts about that, like how pathos works? So for your speeches, here's how to use it. Enargia is a great technique, and that's when you use your words to paint a vivid picture, to transport the audience. A lot of you guys have used this already in your speeches introductions. I've heard that used. Like, imagine this, and then you paint a scene. That's pathos. You're pulling us along emotionally by connecting to us through story, right? That's what you're really doing. You're connecting to us through story. And as we talked about in week three of this class, when humans hear stories, we perk up, we listen, we pay attention. So pathos, stories are all pathos, little pathos engagement. They're really good at it. So NRG is a really good way to do it. Use that in your speech. You can also show emotional control. So that's not the same thing as, the student we heard earlier, right? He was like, "Ugh," but he never actually sounded angry. And he never sounded like he really wanted to fight us. That's emotional control. If he lost his emotional control in the middle of that speech, if he got just too worked up and had to calm himself down, we as the audience would probably lose a little respect for him. We'd probably go, "Oh, you're a touch crazy. Okay, cool. Well, I'm backing up a little and giving you a little more space to continue." That kind of thing you don't want to happen, right? It's emotional control that audiences respect. So if you're going to tell us about the horrible thing that happened to you and you're going to cry, that's okay. Just show us that you're in control. You don't want to break down and fall apart and fall out of your chair, but tears that you then control, like you show us that you care, you cry a little. Okay, now let me keep going. Audiences really connect to that, right? Audiences go, "Oh, wow, this is real." When somebody really truly shows real emotion, but not in a terrifying way, like they're not about to punch me, they're not crying so much that they can't continue their speech, but they're showing us they really care. That's powerful stuff. And that is convincing. That's highly convincing to people. So that's one, emotional control. Like I mentioned, that the emotions you can show us don't all have to be negative. You can do things like humor, showing us surprise, joy, love. All of that is good stuff. But you can also use the bad, sadness, anger, pain. If it's legitimate, share it with us. It will make all of this more persuasive. And then stories. Stories. Stories are pathos incarnate. So you've been practicing stories now for 6 weeks. So I recommend putting one into your final speech. If you do it, then you'll probably hit a lot of points. And then the last one, ethos. Ethos. So pathos and logos sound a little like what we think of them as. Pathos sounds like passion. Logos sounds like logic. Ethos sounds like ethics. It's not what it is. It refers to the ethical standing of the person giving the speech. We don't have that in our society in America anymore. But if you watched the video we watched earlier about rhetoric, if you remember, he was talking about 400 BC. That's when all of these philosophers and sophists were arguing and building. Well, all of that happened in one place. Like in your town, you would have a place to go to hang out with the other philosophers and argue, and people would come and watch, and you had a public reputation that really, really mattered. So we're trying to manufacture those now through social media, things like karma on Reddit. That's all like we're attempting to create a situation where ethos still matters, but with the world's population and with our current technology, your reputation is it seems to either not exist or be everything that's important to you, like a celebrity. So what about all of us? What do we do when we're giving speeches and we want to use ethos, but we're not famous people? Let's talk about that. So that's what ethos is all about. So it's traditionally based on the authority of the speaker, their credibility, their honesty, their trustworthiness, their reputation. Um, but you can see ethos at work in lots of ads in lots of different ways. This one I think is cute. On the box of Kicks, when they say kid tested, mother approved, that is an ethos bid right there. It's also cute that today it's parent approved instead of mother. When I was a kid, it was just mom's. But I like that. And that's a little example you've probably seen and not thought about. But that's Kicks trying to say people like us, legitimate people, not just everybody, but moms like us. And then you read that and go, "Oh, cool. Okay. Well, that slightly persuades you." Let's look at some other stuff. This one here, this ad, I just want to rip it apart so bad. I want to dissect it. Trusted by moms because we say so. Then there's these 5 stars and a quote from Sydney 2. Is Sydney 2 a real person? No, no. I don't. There are so many I've been teaching this for 5 years now, and I get to this question, and there's so often when I ask and I look at the panel of students, there's a lot of students who are like, no, Sydney 2 isn't real. There's no way there's no way for 1,000 reasons. If she was real, we'd have her full name. We wouldn't just have Sydney 2. There's a lot more than two Sydneys. The number is there just so that you don't think about it. They're hoping you don't think about it. They're hoping you just see this and go, yeah, that's probably somebody's like email address. And then you don't think about it, but it works. It's still working on you because humans are horrible at this. We're just so easy to manipulate. But that's why, like this is ethos at work, right? Is it trusted by moms? Maybe. Is Sydney real? Did anybody give it 5 stars? None of that's true. But that's what the ad is using. It's all ethos. And it works. It works. Let's look at another infuriating way that ethos works. How about this? This watch, this Omega watch. It's James Bond's choice. James Bond's choice. Not Daniel Craig. James Bond. It's not saying Daniel Craig wears this watch. It's saying a fake person made up by an author who's dead now wears this watch. A fake person. I mean, do you get it? Like that's also ethos. Ethos works really, really well, especially that way. And it's gross that it works. One of our earlier videos we watched like 3 weeks ago actually referred to this specific ad where the guy talked about people see this watch, they want to feel a little more like James Bond, so they go buy the watch. Now you feel a little more like James Bond. It's a personal ethos booster. And then you're hoping other people notice you're wearing the watch so that they notice you're rich. So they notice you're like James Bond. And now your ethos is raised as well. We're doing that with your clothing all the time. It's weird. It's really weird. It's weird what we do. We're weird creatures, but that's one way, right? I just find it crazy that it has nothing. It's not Daniel Craig wears this. It's James Bond. It would still have worked if it said Daniel Craig, though. That's the thing. This next ad, I think you saw it before about this one, Taylor Swift. Yeah, Taylor Swift drinks Coke, and oh my God, you could like have a party with her. You could actually hang out with her in real life because she's a real human. You're like, yeah, this is just selling to you the connection to somebody who maybe you respect. They're hoping you respect her. But if you don't respect her, you know what? No worries. There's 1,000 athletes. There's 1,000 actors. There's 1,000. What else do we care about in this country? Probably just those two things. I was going to say, what else could be up there that who's going to make $1 million to be in that commercial? A politician? No, no. They're too controversial, but also not known well enough. Who is known well enough? Is it our philosophers? Are they who's known? No, it's our athletes and our actors. That's who. And so therefore, they are the most persuasive. So in your speech, feel free, if someone famous cares about your topic, let us know. It will matter. It will matter. If you're like, save the whales, great. But if Taylor Swift is saying save the whales, make sure to let us know because that will sound more impressive than just you. I hate that too. By the way, if you're sitting here listening to this going, wait a minute, isn't I hate being a human. It's garbage. Yeah, it is. It is. We just got out of the trees and we think we're gods, but we are so easy to manipulate. Yeah. So yeah, that's ethos. So how to use it in your speech? Well, there's a lot of ways other than just pulling Daniel Craig on stage. But that will work. If you can do that, it'll work. But there's other ways to do it. One is showing goodwill to your audience, right? So it's all about your credibility. If you make the audience think you like them, they will like you and think of you as more credible. Again, isn't that stupid? Yes, but it's true. You need to show goodwill to your audience. Every once in a while with speech, I'll have a student who is so passionate about their topic that they are attacking the audience. They're like, we need to stop prostitution because all of you are making this worse. Yeah, your ethos is gonna go pew on that one. The audience, you could have the best argument ever, but the audience is gonna go, not from this asshole. I don't care what you're saying, right? Abraham Lincoln even said this. He said, it doesn't matter if you have truth on your side, like all truth is on your side, and you transform it into a lance and you try and pierce the heart of your opponent, but you insult them? Useless. Useless. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. People will just lock their heart off away from you. So you gotta show goodwill to the audience. That's one way to enhance your own ethos. Let's go back here. The next thing to do is establish common ground. So we talk about doing that in the introduction, right? You want to make sure that you and the audience are on the same page. So if you are going to, for example, if your speech is going to be about, so like I said, saving the axolotls in Mexico City, you have to get the audience to care, because that's not here. That's not in America. Why do we care? So you want to make sure that you establish that common ground. It's usually pretty easy with a class like this. You just do some audience analysis and you go, oh, wait, this class is probably going to care about my topic. And then you make sure that they do by selling it to us in the beginning. Be sincere. Audiences are extremely good at detecting BS. And if BS shows up at all, it can ruin everything. That can also, by the way, just be how you sound. I don't think anyone in this class is in danger of this, but 3 years ago, I had a student who he felt like I think he felt like he didn't need to be in this class. And so it came across every time he gave a speech that he felt better than the audience. And in his final, I'm going to tell you guys for in your final, you're going to give each other feedback, and I'm going to say, do not bully each other. I didn't consider what he was told bullying. I didn't consider it truth that he needed to hear. That he just sounded like an arrogant prick, and that ruined everything. He had a great argument, but nobody cared. Nobody cares, right? So your audience connection is really important. And it's not just because it's a cute thing to do, it's because of ethos. You need to establish ethos, you need to protect your ethos, you need to guard it. Another thing to do is, of course, use credible, reliable sources and share them. A fast track to losing ethos is to use a source that the audience does not respect. So try to use audience analysis. In this class, I would say, like, for example, probably don't cite Fox News. This looks like a class that if you were to say, well, according to Fox News, I'm right, that the class there's a lot of people who'd be like, don't you know that's terrible? The flip side of that, though, by the way, is you shouldn't be citing people on the left who are the other side of that. Like Rachel Maddow, she's the exact same level of, you shouldn't be quoting those people. There's quotable, credible people. Look for those. Plan and speak carefully. So when you stutter, when you make a mistake, it does lower your ethos. And that's a bummer. So just make sure you practice. Make sure you've practiced your speech. You've probably seen this, by the way, already. Be thinking about in this class, the speeches you've watched. When students seem practiced, they seem more believable. They seem more like you want to be on their side. Notice that and apply that to your own speech, right? Practice. That's one of the reasons is you don't want to come across like an amateur. You want to look like the professional standing in front of everybody. Alrighty. And then was there another one? No, there they are. So that's ethos, logos, pathos. Here they all are. There are two more that I want to mention just for funsies, because Aristotle actually had 5 pillars of persuasion, but we only talk about these 3. The other 2, this is why we don't talk about them. Kairos means an appeal to timeliness, meaning your argument needs to be about something happening at the right time. So, for example, if you were to give your speech about emancipating the American South, well, that happened, so it's a bit late. That's not very persuasive, right? Or if you were to give an argument that AI needs to be given the same rights as people, it's a bit early. We don't have AI that is as smart as people yet. So that argument probably won't work. Maybe it will, but timeliness is what he's talking about there, making sure your argument matches the season you're in. We don't talk about it much because you're probably going to do that already. But apparently in ancient Greek, that wasn't always the case. The other one, telos, talks about your purpose or goal. It's a teleological argument. And that, we don't all agree anymore on the purpose of humanity. So you can't base an argument as teleological anymore unless you start with making the foundation of, okay, let's make sure we all have the same religion. Do we all have the same religion? We don't. Damn. Totally can't use that argument. But if you did, you could imagine how that would work, right? If everybody in this room all believed in the same God and agreed on the same holy scriptures, then that argument all of a sudden is on the table of like, we need to save the axolotls because God says in the Bible to protect the land, or I don't know, some other God, right? Ahura Mazda says in his texts that I'm trying to pick a religion that maybe nobody here is, but like, whatever. That makes sense, right? So that's why we don't talk about those. You don't bother with either one. You bother with timeliness by making sure that, yeah, your speech is timely. You're already going to do that. And as far as teleological, we want to make sure that your speech, if you're going to speak to purpose, the purpose of humanity, then you have a much longer speech to give than we have time for in this class because you're going to have to establish common ground first. Any questions about those? How those will work in your speech? All right. All righty. So the last thing I want to do is put you guys into some small groups to discuss how will you use logos, ethos, and pathos in your upcoming speech specifically, right? How are you going to use these in your upcoming argument? And I want each person to share because there are some people in your groups who will be like, I don't even know what my speech is going to be about. Help each other out like we always do in these moments. But also, I want you to be sharing what you're thinking because it's really easy with ethos, logos, and pathos to get stuck in a rut and think of whatever one of them is as only one example. Like earlier, like we almost did here with that student example when pathos looked like, "Rah!" And I was like, oh God, they're all going to think that's all pathos is. But it's a lot of things, right? It's a lot of things. So maybe somebody in your group will be like, I'm going to argue this, and then they'll say something that you've never thought of. I want you to be stealing from each other. As iron sharpens iron, so blah, 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 Bible verse. So, is there any questions about that? All right, and this is the last thing we're doing. So, I would really encourage you to not leave class without having an idea of what your speech is going to be about. But yeah, up to you. When you're done talking in your group, we're done. I'll be here if you have any questions. Here you go.
Um,
Oh, you just muted. There you go.
Sorry. Hi. I just had a quick question. I don't know. I don't know if there's like a way to talk off the recording or not here.
Oh, let me end it.